You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with DM Needom. Hi gang, Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. Today's guest is Judith Joy. She has a book out called Dear Future Lover, which is about manifesting your future partner. And the other is about manifesting parenting, which is surviving your teenager. She talks about the journey and struggle she had with her daughter and how ultimately, which she said after we left air, that she really wished she would have had said this, that her daughter went from depression to being happy by doing the techniques that she learned from her mom. So we didn't cover that, but she did make that statement after we signed off. So keep that in mind as you listen to her journey. She also offers teaching and training on how to help yourself at her website, which all those notes will be in the bio. So I think the story, we talk a lot about manifesting and creating and actually picking up on cues that sometimes we just don't pay attention to. So I hope you enjoy the show. This episode of the Better 2 podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needom, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. An afternoon at the pool changed Wes's life. When he saw Jen, he knew she was his always and forever. Most nights, Wes spent pursuing his dream of landing a record deal. With Jen looking up at him, he knew nothing would stop him. His dream was fast becoming a reality, until Mason Langford entered their world. While Wes was living his dream, he lost his heart. Now he wondered if he'd ever get her back. Available now, Love is Worth Waiting For by DM Needom at most booksellers. Hi, Judith. How are you doing today?
Doing terrific. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. And you are located currently in Florida, but you're also a Chicago person.
Yes, I am.
So I take it you're spending the winter outside the snow. Not that we've had any yet, but normally by this time, you could have a foot, and sometimes none. So
I realized that when I married a man from Florida that I would be spending winters down here.
that's not a bad thing, though. I mean, if you get away from the snow.
It worked out that about 2 weeks after we got married, 3 of my 4 kids moved home,
Oh, wow.
for various different reasons. So my husband and I moved out. We went to Florida for the winter and said, figure it out.
And did they?
Yeah.
And was the house still intact when you came back?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing, because sometimes families and siblings don't necessarily always get along, which kind of brings us to what your Better 2 moment was, that you had an issue with one of your kids.
Yeah. I even wrote a book about it.
Really?
Surviving your teenager and being happy anyway.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the journey.
When she was 3, she started asking her dad and I if we were getting divorced. And we were like, no, we're fine. And every year she would ask us. But from her perspective, from her truth, she knew that we would get divorced. And it wasn't until she was 14 that we was like, all right, we're getting divorced.
Okay.
But imagine being told, no, you're wrong, your whole life.
It would make you question your intuition without knowing what your intuition
is.
She did
not question her intuition. She is solid on that.
Okay.
But what it did was it made her angry.
Okay.
And then depressed and anxious and all of that. And so when she got up to 7th grade, it was hard to get her to go to school, which it always was, but it was especially hard. And they said, this might not be the best solution for her.
Really?
And I went, okay, now what?
Yeah.
I did not want to do a therapeutic boarding school. A therapeutic school. It just wasn't the right thing. So I'm like, we're going to try homeschooling. I've always thought about this. Yeah, okay, tried that, didn't work. All right, I'm going to hire a teacher. Yeah, that didn't work either. So we ended up sending her to a treatment center,
Okay.
which she calls a boarding school. And they were the ones to diagnose that she actually had depression and anxiety. And that's what she was there for. I was sending her because I knew that the road that she was on and the choices that she was making would lead her into drugs and alcohol and promiscuity and all of that other stuff, that we really didn't need to go down that road. And made a choice, stuck to it. On a Monday, I was like, I'm done. I've made this choice. Called my then husband at work and said, we're sending her. Okay, we'll talk about it when we get home. No, you don't understand. The decision is made. Oh, okay. By Wednesday, I had interviewed a bunch of schools. By Friday, I was visiting the school that she actually went to. And she was never abused there. They were strict. Did she like it? No. Is it one of her defining moments in life that helped her switch her viewpoint? Possibly. She does realize that it was good for her. But the better would have been better too, was if I had tried homeschooling in first grade when I first said something's going on.
Yeah.
And then we might not have gotten to that point. But you make a choice, and if it works, you keep going with it. And if it doesn't work, you change your choice.
Right. And I mean, where does she fit in the birth order of your children?
3.
Okay. So you've had other children already. So this was somewhat abnormal, but every child is different. And you recognize that when you're a parent.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I was a teacher. So
Okay.
I recognize that.
Yeah. So, I mean, for you, when you say homeschooling, it's like, well, you had the teaching background. It's not like somebody that's, we'll say, into finance going, okay, I'm going to be a teacher now. Which, I mean, that's happened recently in the pandemic. It's like, okay, now I'm a teacher. I mean, you had the qualifications. So does she have any resentment, though, that you sent her away?
For a long time, she did. In fact, she's 32 now. And just this past summer, she came to me and apologized that she wasn't able to see my viewpoint. And looking at it from my viewpoint, she knows that I did the best that I could with her.
Does she have children now?
No.
Okay.
No. But she was a nanny.
Okay. So there is because I mean, having children does change your viewpoint. It changes your viewpoint on how you look at the world, everything. And that's why I was curious if that's what precipitated her viewpoint change.
Well, the thing is that we've tried therapy since she was 6 years old. She tried all the different medications that they wanted her to try. And we tried the therapeutic school. And when she got to about 21, she came to me and said, Mom, this isn't working. Teach me what you do. And I'm like, oh, this is so wonderful.
Well, and we need to rewind a little bit because we didn't really discuss the fact that you had chronic migraines that you were trying to get treatment for and you never had treatment on, correct?
I had treatment, but I did not want to go the standard route. I went to Mayo Clinic and they said, you have headaches, take Excedrin. I went to Diamond Headache Clinic and they said, here, have some drugs. And I was like, no, not that one. I went to a Catholic hospital in Indiana. This is the best. Put your husband before yourself. And I went, I'm out. And that's when I switched over to all the alternative stuff. The acupuncture, the chiropractic, the supplements, anything that I could try. And I was going to a chiropractor because I was a dancer. And I was taking all these classes and these ladies said, hey, this guy is great. So I went to him. He would put me back together after I knocked myself out in dancing. Mm-hmm. And he was sharing an office with somebody else. And I was like, oh, what are they doing over there? Oh, what are they doing over there? Well, that looks cool. What are they doing over there?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I made an appointment. And this doctor was also a chiropractor, but focused on nutrition. And she said, there's this guy in the back room, and he's tapping on heads. I don't know what he's doing, but people are getting better. Sure, let's try it. Well, that was 22 years ago. And I was his patient, then I was his student, and now I'm his colleague.
Nice, nice.
And he has helped me learn so much, and he has helped me with so many of the headaches that I can get rid of a lot of them. He can get rid of a lot of them. And some of them you're just going, all right, my body really just wants to rest right now.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say the one thing about, there's nothing wrong with regular doctors. And I always try to reiterate that when we have a topic of discussion that, somebody has, I don't want to say lack of faith in the medical system, but they have lost, they were not treated properly. Nobody really took the time to diagnose you properly. It was, here's the Band-Aid, just carry on. And I want to say the other thing about that is a lot of times, and I know people are saying I'm wrong about this, but I've witnessed it. Women are not taken seriously when it comes to the medical profession. They kind of look at you and go, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, all right.
Well, especially 30 years ago when I started looking.
Well, I'm going to go back just 10 years ago when my husband and I would go to the same primary care doctor. And he would sit there and go into detail with my husband. And then he would look at me and want to talk about insurance because I had the background in insurance and just kind of go, okay, yeah, whatever.
Wow.
No, the worst is I had actually mentioned getting a breast reduction because I have neck pain. I have neck problems and I have structural issues with my neck.
Hey, that's my problem, maybe.
Maybe. But here's the thing. He tells me, I had a woman, I'll go back a second. When I was 26, I had a female doctor tell me, she's like, do you want a breast reduction? I'm like, no, why? She goes, you're going to have neck problems and back problems. I'm like, nah, I'm fine. Yeah, famous last words. I wish I would have known. However, I've gone to an orthopedist and a neurosurgeon, and both of them are like, oh, they're both men. Nah, that wouldn't cause you any problems. Wouldn't cause your neck any problems. And I'm like, how do you figure? But anyway, back to this original story. So this doctor tells me in front of my husband, we knew him. So we had been seeing him for an extensive period of time. So he was willing enough to be just blatant. So he said to me, he goes, well, why do you want to have your fun bags taken care of?
Okay.
Yeah. I just looked at him. I was a little mortified. I said, because of my neck. He goes, well, lose some weight first and then we'll talk. He was no longer our doctor shortly after that. And I now go to women doctors. I trust women doctors a little bit more because they're a little bit more relatable. And I mean, when I have a female chiropractor, my female chiropractor is a lot easier on me than a male chiropractor, because if a male chiropractor adjusts me or anybody really adjusts me, I can't walk afterwards.
Well, what I have heard about chiropractors is that the women are smaller, so they have to get the vectors exactly right so that the bones slip into place, where a male chiropractor is larger and can force it.
Yeah.
And that's, I've married to a chiropractor now. That was one of my goals.
Nice.
My next husband is going to be a chiropractor. And I have to say that that's a little bit true. Even though for a man, he's gentle, he's not as gentle as my friend who's a female chiropractor.
My chiropractor usually uses the activator now because my back is so jacked up. I mean, I had somebody tell me you have the back of a 70-year-old when I was like 48. I'm like, great. So what happens when I'm 70? But when I was going to a male chiropractor, literally, it's like he would adjust me. I'd get off the table and it'd be like, I'm hunched over walking like I'm 80. So it's like, can't do this anymore. And and going back to the medical thing, I don't think that I've talked about this before. As I said, I have structural back problems. I got told, oh, because of other symptoms, you have fibro. All right.
Oh, I think I had that one too.
Yeah. So we got in a car accident. I went to an acupuncturist. She's like, well, in order to do this properly, I need you to have blood work done. Okay. Now, mind you, my regular doctor has done blood work for thyroid and everything else. It's always normal because the thyroid panel, I'm sure you're aware of this, always comes back normal. So we do all the blood work. She pulls me in her office and she's like, you have Hashimoto's. Like, oh, okay. And so she explains this. So I go to my primary care doctor. You know what he says to me? Same doctor with fun bags. Where did you get this? Not anything else, just where did you get this? Like, how dare you question me? And it was just kind of like, really? So I think women, so when you're saying that nobody really listened to you, go take some Excedrin, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Well, the thing is, Western medicine is fabulous with emergency care.
Mm-hmm.
No, if I'm in a car accident, I want to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Not if I can flip the energy on it and fix it myself, I will. But
in a car accident, though, there's a possibility you're not going to be able to.
Yeah, especially if I'm involved.
Nicely put.
No, my son was in a car accident, rolled the car twice, totaled 3 cars. And the paramedic called me and said, we'd like to take him to the hospital because he was 16. Mm-hmm. And I'm feeling the energy and I'm like, no, he doesn't need to go. And I kept working on it and then he was fine.
Okay.
But there have been times that I've been like, let's get to the hospital. I'll keep working on it. And maybe by the time we're at the hospital, nothing will happen, mm-hmm. which has also happened. Or if we get to the hospital, we're there if we need them.
Yeah.
So anyway, medical community, great with, here's a problem, let's fix it. However, with chronic problems, it's not so easy to say, this is the problem, here's the solution. There are usually a couple things that have stacked up, and it's usually that your body in some way has adapted to it. Mm-hmm. So you have a habit going on in your body. And the work that I do helps people unravel this habit and create a new one.
Well, let's unpack fibro for a second. You said you had the same diagnosis. If you go in and look at fibro, it's so many symptoms of so many other things.
Yeah. And it's just a garbage bag of they can't figure it out.
That's how I always looked at it. It's like, it's a catch-all. And then I would have one doctor say, well, you really don't have fibro. And it's like, I kind of figured that out because I have structural issues with my back. That would explain the pain syndrome I have. It's not this, it's frustrating because when you're not heard and you're trying to figure out the cure for yourself, and I'm sure you went through this. I know you went through this. You get frustrated and it's like, okay, so when is somebody actually going to listen to me? And when you think about it, when we didn't have the internet, if a doctor would have said, this is it, you're kind of like, okay, well, I guess this is it. I'm not going to be able to go and see what else is out there, what other possibilities there may be. And I'm not saying WebMD is the end all be all. I'm not saying that at all, but it gives you a broader scope of looking at what's going on.
Very true. Now, I'm lucky that the guy tapping on my head, mm-hmm. well, he's a male doctor. And by the way, he just messaged me. That was the thing. He is very open to listening and listens deeper than anybody else that I know. And he's amazing. So I'm really lucky to be working with him.
Well, that's the one thing I will say about my primary care doctor now. When she replaced the other guy, she actually left that practice and she is now part of University of Chicago. So, and she knows me well enough now that she'll make sure that she puts me as her last patient of the day. So she can spend an hour with me if she wants.
Yeah.
And that to me is a real doctor because she's willing to listen and willing to say, okay, let's unpack this and really look at all the things that are going on.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem. I mean, now you have people going, okay, well, CVS has this nice little primary care package, doctor, little doc in the box thing going on. They can check you out. It's like, who is qualified at CVS to do this?
Well,
They have
physician's assistants.
I know. And it's just, is that, it's kind of like a doctor light, I guess.
Yeah, for something normal like a cold,
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
For something that's really deep and chronic, probably not.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion.
No, I agree. I mean,
I would love to be proven wrong.
No, I agree. And the thing about it is even the ER, there's a time when I went to my primary care, this is ages ago, and she's like, I think your gallbladder's messed up. You need to go to the ER right now. I'm like, all right. So I go to the ER. There was another woman who was pregnant, but didn't know she was pregnant, exhibiting the same symptoms as me. They ran a pregnancy test on me because, they always run a pregnancy test no matter what you tell them. And they're like, well, you just have a stomach bug. That's it. Okay. Fast forward 2 weeks. I go back to my primary care doctors. All she wanted them to do was ultrasound me. They didn't do that. And I go back to the primary care doctor and she's like, they should not have released you from the hospital. Your liver levels were through the roof. But they did, because somebody else had pregnancy symptoms. And it baffles the mind, because those little things can cost somebody their life. I was fortunate it didn't, but that could kill somebody.
Yeah.
So
we've established that doctors are not infallible.
well, my dad has always said that they're practicing medicine.
Yeah, they're human.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. And I think the medical profession is a wonderful thing. So, don't come at either myself or Judith and say, well, you guys are just thinking MDs are crazy. No, there's a time and a place for them. It's just not, I think in our society, because insurance companies have told doctors, you have a 15-minute quadrant to see a patient. In 15 minutes, you're not going to be able to talk to them and explain what's going on.
No. And so many things today are a result of stress.
Mm-hmm.
That a primary care physician, unless you come in with, I'm stressed about A, B, C, and D, they're not going to have time to really talk to you to figure out that you are stressed.
Right.
And that you might need to learn some ways to let go of some stress.
Well, and it's much easier for me to give you a script if you're saying you're depressed than saying maybe you need to go see a therapist.
Or maybe you need to look at your marriage.
Yeah.
Or maybe you need to have a purpose in life. Because the people who have a purpose in life, they're like chugging along and doing great. My dad is 92, still has a purpose in life, still works 3 or 4 hours a day, minimum. And he's doing great.
My father-in-law, when he retired, he stayed active with his wife. But most of his friends, they died within 6 months after retiring.
They lost their purpose.
Yeah. And I mean, I went through that when I left my insurance job, because in my mind, I was a claims supervisor. That was who I was. And it took me, I was in my 40s, and it took me a little while to go, okay, who am I now? What am I doing now with my life? Who am I? Yeah. And I think we tend to, as humans, and we're taught that you need to take what is outside of you, whether it's be your good grades in school, your position in school, what are you, what clubs do you belong to? All those things matter. All those little titles matter. But do they really? Do they?
What really matters is how you feel on the inside. And what most people don't realize is that you can choose how you feel.
True.
You don't have to just take it, whatever comes at you. You can go, well, today's going to be a fabulous day. And then you start looking for all those little things that make it fabulous. Like went to a restaurant for lunch. Woohoo, I can go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
And then it was fabulous. Nobody was there, like one other table. And you get all these little bits and you're like, whoa, I can eat that and I can eat that. Whoa, that's great. Mm-hmm. Waitress, nice, great. if you start celebrating everything, and even if the things that don't work so well, find something to celebrate about it, then it's so much easier. And then when you set the intention that you're going to feel this way, the universe says, oh, that's what you want. Here, let me give you these experiences.
Yeah. And I mean, with COVID, you would never thought, let's go back to 2019. You would have never thought that going to a restaurant would be such a reward. I mean, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, we're going out to dinner, da, 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 da. I actually have not been out to a restaurant. I mean, I've taken takeout, but I haven't been to a restaurant to sit down since, I would say, early 2020.
Wow.
So, yeah. But I mean, there's been a lot of different circumstances in my life that I haven't done that. And it's just like, at the time when I had the last opportunity to go, it's like, COVID was still going on. I'm just like, I'm going to pass. And not that COVID's not going on, it is going on, but it was just one of those things where it's like, I'm not putting myself at risk, because why am I wearing a mask all the time? And then I'm going to go to a restaurant and take the mask off. So to me, it was just, at the time, it's like, I'll pass. Let's do takeout. So that's what we did. But that I appreciate, because I still have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, you have the ability to make the choice now.
Exactly. So I had a guest on it. You said you were working with energy. I had a guest, Lynn Purdon from Australia, who actually sees energy. She's always seen it. So when you were working with it, do you actually see it, or are you just feeling it?
I get this knowingness. And when I was first dating my husband, I was like, here, feel this. And I'm doing the energy and, whatever. I said, can you feel it? He goes, yeah, and I can see it too.
Nice.
Darn, I want to be able to see it.
I can see it if somebody is working on me, especially during cranial sacral or massaging my head or around that area. I can see the to me, it's always usually, if it's really a healer, it'll be a blue, indigo, purple color that looks like a lava light. It's a lot like the lava light.
Oh, that's cool.
And then
I see cartoons.
Okay. Whatever works. I mean, if that's how you see it.
But the thing is that people say when you see it, you think you're like physically seeing it. I'm just seeing it in my mind's eye.
Okay. Well, that's kind of how I feel. It's like, I don't think I'm actually physically seeing it, because they are working right around the third chakra. So in the crown chakra. So I would say definitely that's why it's there, is because they are in that area working, and that's the most powerful area to be around. So I have seen some green, but it's very weird. And not everybody that works on me has it. So it's like, I can tell, I hate to say it, I can tell actually who's more of a healer than not. And it's kind of weird like that, because it's like, I don't want to say to the person working on me going, well, you just don't have the gift. But other
what
people.
What about if it's not that? What if it's something else?
It could be.
Now, what if it's something like, I have more of a connection with this healer?
It could be.
Because they may be great with somebody else.
It could be.
Yeah.
I won't disagree. It's one of those things where it's like, or it could be that they just don't have, they could be going through some stuff and their energy level isn't that high.
True.
I mean, there's a lot of different, we could sit here and analyze this all day, because there's all sorts of information. I mean, when it comes to dealing with metaphysical stuff, there's all sorts of information that there's many reasons there, maybe there's a connection with the other person and me, there's many different avenues to look at.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you can analyze all you want, but in the end, does it work?
Exactly. If they're helping you, that's what you're going there for. So that's what matters. So you were holding up 2 books earlier.
Yes.
Before we came on. So what's the second book about?
First one's Surviving Your Teenager. The second one is Dear Future Lover.
Okay.
Bring Your Book Boyfriend to Life.
Okay.
After I got divorced, I went through a period of time when I was working on myself. And part of that was to decide, well, do I want another relationship? And if I do, what does this relation look like? What does it feel like? What's going on in this future relationship? and I started keeping a journal. And I wrote it in terms of dear future husband.
Okay.
Because I was going to get married again. I was convinced.
So in a way, you're manifesting. You're creating your manifesting.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. I got you.
And then I put it away. And then, 14 months go by and I forget about it and whatever. And I'm cleaning and I was like, oh, look, a journal. And I open it up and I'm like, oh, there's writing in it.
Yes, because most of us do own journals that are really nice that we're like, oh, it's just too nice to actually write in it. Trust me, I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I started reading it and I was like, wait a minute. I met this guy over here and I just said that. And I kept reading and yeah, he's that. And I kept reading, yeah, he's that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had actually manifested him.
The house I'm living in manifested. Yep.
Yeah.
I get it totally. And the thing about manifesting, and I think most people forget this, is you have to really kind of be specific. Because if you because if you just say, I want an SUV, okay. And even if you go, well, okay, I'm going to say I want a Cadillac SUV. I don't. But if I said that, okay, well, great. Guess what? You got a 2008 Cadillac SUV. You didn't say new. Didn't say new. You didn't say what you wanted in it. I said I wanted a brick mailbox that had 2 flower pots. That's what I got. And this house, I didn't think we were going to get. We looked at another house in the neighborhood, but we ended up in this one. So, and I wanted all sorts of things, and I got all those things.
Oh, the thing is, you have to go with what's in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your heart and your words don't match, the universe will give you your heart.
Yeah.
When my daughter left the treatment program, I said, you can't come home. You need to go to a boarding school. And she was all pissed off about that. But I showed her a video. I'm like, hey, this one looks good. I'm never going to that school, blah, 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 whatever. So we go off looking at schools and it's her life. So she gets a choice into where she goes at this point. And we drive up to this, she's going, it has to have a swing set. I'm like, I will buy the school a swing set. We're going to find the school.
Mm-hmm.
We drive up to this school and there are 2 swings right by the front door.
Nice.
I'm like, this is it. I didn't even look at the school. This is it. It has a swing. You're going here. It turns out to be a good school for her. A year and a half later, she's laying in the front hall talking to her friends, sits up and goes, oh, this is the school that I swore I'd never go to. So her desire for a swing set or for swinging was more than her desire to not go to that school.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can sit here and think back to before I met my husband, people used to joke around my friends that I was manifesting girl. They're like, as soon as you open your mouth, something happens. And it's usually it usually works out exactly how you say it's going to work out.
Yeah.
But yeah, during being married for 16 years, it kind of goes, I don't say goes away, but it moves around and you have to get back to your core after that.
What do you mean by that?
My husband passed. So it's like, after he passed, it's like I had to go back to who I was as an individual instead of a couple.
Yes.
And rediscover who I am. I mean, whether it be divorce or, my divorce, that was life changing because I went from being a mom of 2 kids and married to being single. But how do I say this? The kids were more important in that relationship than the spouse.
Yeah.
In this one, the spouse was my life partner. And, having that taken away from you is kind of like, okay.
Well, and not to mention when you're, I don't know what age is, but when you're 40 and you're out in the dating world and you're meeting people and how you are as an individual, and then you get in a relationship and then you get to 60 and you're going, wait a minute, am I back to 40 or am I a different person?
Yeah.
So if every cell in your body reproduces every 7 years, some more than that, then why do we hold on to our old beliefs that didn't work for us to begin with? Yet we keep recreating them because we won't let them go. Imagine what our bodies would be like if we didn't let go of the cells that no longer worked for us.
I think we keep them because they feel comfortable.
Well, it's because we know them.
Well, exactly. It's like when someone that comes into your life that you recognize as somebody else, but you don't recognize it right away. The friend, you find somebody, you're like, wow, it feels like I've known you forever. And sometimes it's that soul connection, but in most cases, it's like after a few weeks or months of the friendship, you're like, oh, you remind me of such and such. That didn't go well. But, I mean, there's that thing you unpack.
Maybe it went well.
But you start realizing, I mean, I had a bad propensity for a while to pull people into my life that were like my mother. And that was not a good relationship, but I did it. I kept repeating that cycle. And it's like, when does this end? You have to, as you were saying, cut that out and start allowing new stuff to come in.
Yeah. And that's about the part about looking within and who are you and who would you like to be? What would you like to feel? What are you ready to let go of? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? And you take time to explore yourself, then you can actually make a different choice. If you don't take the time to explore yourself, you just keep making the same choice over and over.
Right.
But they're just called by different names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a reader, because I read cards, I've had clients come to me and say, is he coming back? If it didn't work the first time, why do you want him back? I mean, even the fun thing about before my husband and I started dating, about 6 months before or a year before, I read for him. And I told him some blonde was going to come in and rock his world and turn it completely upside down. And he asked me, he's like, well, is that my ex-fiance from, my very first fiance? I'm like, I don't know who it is. Because I'm not going to put myself in the reading. And I wasn't looking at him like, oh, you're so wonderful. Not on my radar at all. And, it's like, so he's asking me if it's an ex. Why does it have to be an ex? When somebody tells you somebody, why do you want an ex to come back?
Obviously worked on some level.
It's comfortable.
Yeah. How did you get into reading cards?
I have always been intuitive. The story you were telling about your daughter saying that you guys were going to get a divorce. When my parents, I was in third grade, almost fourth, my parents were going to Disney World. We were all supposed to go to Disney World. And I told them, I think it was eight or almost 9. I said, you guys need to go to Disney World by yourself. And they're like, why? I'm like, because you guys need to spend some time alone. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you need some time alone. So I didn't go to Disney World. What 8 or 9-year-old says, I don't want to go to Disney World?
Wow.
So I had prophetic dreams. My mom, as I was growing up, she would go get her cards read and I would sit in the shops in the French Quarter and look at everything. And I always had these, like I said, prophetic dreams and just certain things I would know. And as I got older, my intuition just kept going and going. And I took an intuition class. And the very first class, it was from a reader friend that was teaching it. It was only me and another woman, and she made me stand behind this other woman. I had never met this woman before. I have no idea who she is. We did a couple exercises to warm up and everything. She's like, okay, I want you to stand behind the person, put your hands on their shoulder, and tell me what you're getting. Okay, fair enough. So I'm like, yes, I start getting some really detailed stuff, like the guy's eye color, that his hair it's curly, but it's not really, it's more wavy than anything, but everybody just assumes he's got curly hair and his eyes are green, but everybody thinks they're blue-gray. I mean, it was weird. And I had this really weird energetic sensation coming up my side and it was freaking me out. And I'm telling her about a relationship with her son and everything. And I'm just like, whoa, stop, enough. And prior to this, I mean, I had been going down 90 and I was coming around the curve where they used to have that wicked bend and something told me to slow down. I just heard this inclination, like, slow down. And as I came around the bend, traffic was at a dead stop. you know how people drive in Chicago. Come on. People driving like maniacs in Chicago 190. So I would have been toast had I not done that. So that was kind of getting all these little hits. And then, so I took the intuition class and I stuck with it. And I started feeling more and more how I was connected to it and paying more attention. I mean, I've always had it. It's just, so my teacher, long story short, she ended up teaching a second class because I had been there so many times and she was hoping other people would take it too, but nobody did. So for a couple classes, it was just her and I. And I got the same deck that she had, and I really liked the deck. It was the Cosmic Tarot. And I said, I want to learn how to read. And so she says, okay, we're just going to put the book over here. And this is how I read cards. And so she showed me. And she made me read her that night after about 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay. And I told her what I needed to tell her. And she's like, yeah, you're spot on. She told me the next week what happened after that reading, because I had warned her about a car that was going to cut her off. And I described the car and she's like, yeah, on my way home. That's what happened. I'm like,
wow.
Okay. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
It's interesting. You can use it in so many different areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend's son is a state trooper. And it was like 10:45 at night and he was getting off at 11, something like that. So normally he would start on his way home because they keep their cars. And he's like, wait a minute, something's coming. So he's sitting on 90 in Wisconsin, and he's like watching the cars come over the hill. No, not that one, not that one, not that one. Yeah, that one. And the car comes over, he throws his lights on, pulls them over. Drunk driver, very cooperative. He takes the driver in, puts him in lockup, whatever, and doesn't find out till later that this guy was actually driving on his cousin's license because this guy is an international arms dealer.
Oh, crap.
And this was like his first month as a trooper.
Wow. He's lucky he didn't get hurt.
Yeah, but his intuition
I know.
So strong.
Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing story. It is an absolute amazing story.
Yeah.
We don't listen to our intuition in most cases. We are
That
taught.
is so true.
We are taught as children not to listen to it.
So true. If I'd listened to my intuition, I would have homeschooled my daughter, when she was in kindergarten, first grade.
I can sit here and tell you my first wedding. If I would have paid attention, and my mom came to me in a dream beforehand and told me that she had something to tell me, which she was already gone at this point. And I was annoyed because she had kept coming to tell me things. And she was just like, I'm not dead. And it's just like, at 22 years old, I was not having it. Okay. I was not going to listen to you that you're not dead. I get it now. But then, so she even grabbed my daughter in this dream. She had my daughter with her and she's like, yeah, I need to tell you something. And I'm like, you're dead. Just go away. So I ignore her. Bad on me. The minister doesn't have the book. He doesn't have the keys to get the right book for the ceremony. So he's going to have to wing the ceremony. My husband almost doesn't make it in. My husband and I get in a fight on our wedding day. The cake, the second tier of the cake fell.
The universe is giving you a few signs.
It wasn't giving me signs. It was screaming at me. And I'm just kind of like, yeah. And by that time, we didn't even make it a year after we were married. I mean, we lived together 3 years prior. We didn't make it a year after we were married. Not a year. Of course, he also didn't look at me when we exchanged vows. That should be another big tipping point, because you just married the minister. You didn't say the vows to me, so you must have married him. But I think sometimes we don't listen, because the girls wanted us to get married. They were his kids and they wanted us to get married so bad. And it's like, I think it was a year or 2 years after my mom died, and it was just like, I wanted to please them. And that's another problem with us as women. We are taught to people please.
Oh, yes.
And go ahead.
Oh, I'm just totally agreeing with you.
I mean, it's just
one of the hardest things is for people who are caregivers to put themselves first, because they're always pleasing everybody else. And then you start collecting people that tell you what to do and you want to please them. And then you're just doing what everybody else wants you to do. And it gets to your own life and you're going, wait a minute, what happened? I didn't really live my life.
Yeah. Well, and here's a great example. So my father-in-law became a caregiver for his wife after a certain point, and she was legally blind and she had dementia. And she was actually sitting there saying that the neighbor was coming through the walls at one point with bubblegum keys. She had a bubblegum key so she could get in the front door, and she was stealing stuff. The man, bless his heart, got his tools out. Now, he could have just got his tools out and banged on the stuff to act like it. No, he went out and got a new lock for the door and made sure he changed it for her. And, my husband would sit there and go, well, I don't know why my dad does that. He even put a note in the window facing the neighbor's house saying, we know what you've done. And he apologized to the neighbor about it, but it was like, but Georgia was blind. She could not see, but he was still trying to make her happy. So fast forward.
But part of that's probably love too.
Oh, it is. It is. He ended up dying within 6 months after she passed.
Yeah.
So, but I realize as I sit here now, I'm about a year and 4 months out, 5 months. I sit here and look at certain things of my life with my husband, and it's like my husband was legally blind, but yet he wanted a chop, cut, miter saw. No, I know most likely you're not. I don't know if you're familiar or not, but he's legally blind, and it has a red light.
Doesn't matter what kind of saw.
Right. It's a saw. It's got a red light laser on it. Well, because of his diabetes, he had a lot of laser surgery, so he was colorblind at certain points, so he couldn't see red lasers. Oops. But he wanted this. No injuries were happened, but it's sitting in my garage brand new. This is what I'm getting at. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to sell it. But the point is, at a certain point now, looking back, it's like, you did exactly what Rich did. You were placating John. You were acquiescing to his wishes because he had enough stuff to deal with. You were trying to give him hope. So you were acquiescing. And I think that's a big caveat when you become a caregiver, whether it be as a parent. It's different being a parent because you're protective and you want to make sure everything's okay. When someone is in the end stages of life, you're dealing with the whole issue of you're trying to keep them from being depressed as their mortality starts to wane. And that's a very, it took me a long time to unpack that there was a lot of fear attached to that for me.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that.
Very true. Very true. But also part of that is that people serving, you're helping. Well, if you help your neighbor and you help your neighbor and you help your neighbor and you help your neighbor, but you don't help yourself, pretty soon your basket is empty and you don't have any more to give.
Well, isn't it go ahead.
If you take the time every single day and fill your basket, it can be 5 minutes, it could be an hour, it might be a whole day. But take the time to fill yourself up. Do your meditation, do your journaling from the heart, not because you have to do it. Take a hot bubble bath. I don't know anyone that wants a cold bubble bath, but
oh, well, there are some people that like ice baths. I'm not one of them, but
I don't think those are bubble baths.
No, and I don't really think that's something you luxuriate in, but
do your exercising. Whatever it is you choose to help you feel better and you fill up so that you have something to give. And let go of all the programming that doesn't work for you because that's just draining you.
Well, I think that's kind of, when you think about the big picture here, of course, there's the whole oxygen mask on the airplane analogy.
Right.
But when you think about it, when you go back to how we are taught and how we learn, and you were a teacher, and the fact is, not everybody learns the same way. We didn't teach anybody how to deal with stress. And when you think about it, our generations, we didn't have all the stress that has come into the world today. Now you're completely plugged in almost all the time unless you physically step away.
Right.
I had a friend come over and we actually barely were on, I got a couple of emails I had to address, but I was off my phone all day. And it was the most refreshing thing in the world to be off my phone. And you don't think about it because it becomes just you, especially when you're in business for yourself, you're trying to make sure you have everything covered.
Yeah.
But you need to unplug. And, that's the other caveat now, because I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast. They're like, I'm leaving corporate America and starting my own business. Okay. Well, there's a lot of stress.
Unplugging if you start your own business.
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of stress right there because you're leaving your job. So now you're going to have to worry about your finances. Secondly, now you're going to have to be plugged in most of the time because people are going to want to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
So, you have to find the balance. You have to do the self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. I just recently went through a change with my business. We're talking about listening to the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Last January, I did like 8 videos in one day. Wow. And then the next day, I was like crooked.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, okay, my chiropractor husband can put me back. He couldn't do it.
Wow.
So for 6 months, I leaned to the left. And when I went back up to Chicago, I found a chiropractor that worked using my intuition. I'm like, which one? Yeah, him. But I didn't listen. And then I'm like, I'm going to be a speaker and I'm going to do all of this stuff. And I want to do that. So I hired somebody to help me. Wonderful woman. And when she said, I'm going to make you famous, my whole body just went, oh.
You're like, no.
So, but that was great that I had that feeling because then I can work through it so I can become neutral.
Yeah.
And then we're working on everything and the website's not exactly how I want it, but it's good enough to put up. And this isn't how I want it, but it's good enough, all of these things. And I just reached a point where I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm journaling as I'm thinking about this. And I'm like, what is my ideal life? What would my ideal life feel like? And then it just like came to me. It feels like full body tingles that click into place as I glide and move with grace and ease from creation to creation with fun, laughter, and play. And I went, wow, that feels really good. And then I'm like, let's start looking at everything in my life. Oh, I need a tweak over here. I need to let this person go. Oh, I got to do this over here. The hard part for me was making the decision. Mm-hmm. And the rest of it was just details. And now I've picked up flow painting.
Okay.
Or pour painting.
Mm-hmm.
I am having a ball.
Okay.
I cannot paint a tree. It's this, just figure. But with pour painting, you put a base color on, and then you take a cup or a squirt bottle or whatever, and you stack up the paints and then literally pour it on in whatever pattern you want. Use your breath, use a hair dryer, use a balloon, all these things to move the paint around. And all of a sudden it's gorgeous.
Well, and this is what people will say, oh, I'm not creative, but here's a way of being creative without being the artist, as you would say, right. the technically trained artist.
And I didn't think that I liked doing painting. And the only reason I tried it was because I had a coaching client come in and he was super depressed. And I'm like, all right, we've got to get you high vibe. We've got to get you feeling better. Mm-hmm. And so we went into the basement and we painted.
That's kind of how I found out I was a medium, but yeah. I had a client sit down across from me and I'm like, your dad wants to talk to you. You can do this. No, I can't. Yeah, you can. No, I can't. Fine, give me, and I went into it. So it's like, sometimes somebody's presented to us, so we learn something about ourselves.
Yes.
And I get with the 8 videos. I worked a fair once and I did 16 back-to-back readings. And by the end of the day, I was exhausted and it took me 2 days to recover.
Yeah.
So it's people don't realize the energy that goes into either making a video if you're doing something or anything metaphysical. There's a lot of energy you're putting in there.
Yeah. It was like we're doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I started an hour before getting ready for the podcast energetically.
Okay.
And then I started last night getting ready for the podcast using my thinking. And it's like way more than just, we're going to talk.
Well,
and see what comes out.
And we'll see. And that's the thing about, even that aside, you being a guest, people think, oh, podcasting's easy. All you gotta do is sit down and have a conversation. Not really. There's a
little
lot
bit more.
There's a lot more to it than that. And I think that's why, the statistics actually say usually people do about 6 podcasts and then they're done because they realize it's too much work. And most cases, you're not going to make anything off of it. So you do it because you like doing it. That's why you do it. Otherwise, don't do it. Same thing with writing a book, because while we have the avenue to get published easier now, there's a lot of competition out there.
There is. Both of my books deal with the principles of manifestation.
Nice.
And when I'm talking about them, I'm using real examples from real life. And I did not set out to write a book about principles, but that's how it came through.
Mm-hmm. Automatic writing?
Yeah. No, it helped that I was a teacher and I taught writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was a newsletter editor. And that went very well together. So it wasn't hard for me to do. Mm-hmm. The hardest part was sitting down. And then I was like, wait a minute, I got to rethink this. Because if I'm saying the hardest part is to sit down, then what I'm telling the universe is, I want to be sitting, but I don't want to be sitting. So let's do something to my body so I have to sit, even if I don't want to sit. And I'm like, wait a minute, we don't need that.
I had a storage unit in Indiana, and I was going to go down there by myself and get it cleaned out. This was years ago.
Yeah.
And the first time I was going to do it, we had torrential storms and a tornado and everything, so I couldn't do it. And I had two friends that were just like, we're going to go with you. I'm like, no, I got this. I can do it by myself. The next time I was going to do it, my back went out.
Yeah.
Like, okay. The third time I finally acquiesced and said, okay, you can come with me. Oh, guess what? I made the trip. The second time I went down there, because it took 3 trips, so another person went with me. It went fine. The last time I got to go by myself. But so it was an interesting thing, because that right there shows you that when the universe is trying to get you a message, you got to pay attention.
But most people don't recognize that there's a problem.
Right.
They don't recognize that the messages are coming in. When I got divorced, I changed my name. And I didn't want to go back to my maiden name, but I didn't want to keep the married name.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, universe, what name? And I'm looking all over the place and I'm trying this out and I'm trying that out. I like diamonds. So how about Judith Diamond?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, that's too hard. I'm walking through the living room, pick up a book that has been sitting there for a while. Going, oh, I have to put this on the shelf. I put it on the shelf, and the book next to it is Are You Happy? And I went, okay, pull that one out, start reading it. Do something else. The word joy pops up. And then I'm like, whoa, I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat. And while I'm waiting for my dinner or lunch to cook, I'm looking through a magazine and, oh my goodness, there's an article. It's about a woman who changed her name to Joy. And I'm like, ding, ding. I get it.
Ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. So I usually know that if 3 things happen pretty close together, it's got to mean something.
I had to laugh the other day because I had ordered some soup from the local Chinese restaurant. And I am in the middle of trying to get my house organized and cleaned and everything, and cracked open the fortune cookie, and the fortune was something like domestic conditions need to be taken care of. I'm like, if that's not a message from the universe that I'm on the right page, then I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Haunted fortune cookie. Yeah, I had another time I had gone to a buffet with one of my friends, and this was years ago, and it said, "You're the next one to get promoted at your job." I'm like, yeah, right. So I went back, got another fortune cookie a little while later, same fortune. She never grabbed that fortune. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, I got promoted like 2 weeks later. So it was just kind of like, okay, sometimes, the universe speaks in fortune cookies, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
Sometimes
It does.
not. But when it's that blatant, you kind of go, okay. So
sometimes it's a matter of noticing what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people are focused on, I have to do this, that they don't notice all this other stuff. And it might work for you, but if the universe is trying to get your attention, it's going to give you a whisper. Then it's going to give you a nudge. And then it's going to give you a little push. You really don't want to go to the 2x4 over the head.
I was going to say body slam. You don't want that. No.
No.
Well, I mean, this is a prime example of that. So my husband and I, we both worked down the street from each other. Okay. So we didn't know each other though. And I went to some readers, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to meet this guy, da, 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 da." Nobody ever came. So when I was taking that intuition class, she's like, "There's this woman you have to meet in the astrology class." I'm like, "Yeah, right, whatever." And she kept harping on it. She would not let it go. So I meet the woman in the astrology class. We become friends. And then she introduces me to this guy, who ends up being my husband eventually. But as him and I are talking, it's like, he's like, "Can you come pick me up from work? I have an eye doctor appointment." I'm like, "Sure, no problem." So I go pick him up. I used to work right down the block from here. Really? Yeah. And we started talking about the restaurants. Sure. Okay. Then I find out that my ex-landlord was his boss at Wendy's, and I worked at Chuck E. Cheese and Kmart in Shreveport, and he worked at him up here. And it was just kind of like, okay. Our school colors were the same. Even though different high schools, they were exact same colors. So it was just kind of like, even though I was looking for somebody else, he was right there.
Well, that's sort of like when people look at a picture and it's like, "Oh, this is me when I was 5 years old." And their husband's in the background.
Yeah, we had talked about that. It's like, I haven't looked through all my pictures from Disney or his, but we had talked about that I wonder if one of the times we were at Disney, if we both weren't there.
I've wondered the same thing. Because I went to Disney World, and my husband is from Florida. And it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And my husband is 14 years older than me. So he would have been bringing his kids, because I went when I was 16.
Yeah. Well, age is kind of irrelevant. It's a weird thing, because people look at, I'm a writer too, so people will look at a book where the girl is 17, getting ready to be 18. She better be 18 before she consummates that relationship with the older guy. Okay. But I'm serious though. That is a big hot button issue. It does not happen. And there's no way that an 18-year-old would do certain things. And I'm like, I was talking to somebody about the fact that the character gets married at 18, and they're like, "Who would get married at 18? And I'm like, hello. And this other girl was talking about a book that she wrote, and her character was 18, and she had gotten into some shady stuff, and it was based partially on her real life. And this reviewer wrote, "I don't believe an 18-year-old would do this." I think when we hit a certain age, when we hit our 40s and 50s, we somehow forget that at 18 or 17 or 16 that we were impetuous, that we were just out there and trying things and doing things. Yeah. Even if you were straight and narrow, you still did not think like you do now.
True.
But I think we forget. So I don't know. Anyway.
How'd you get into writing?
I've been writing since high school. It was just something that it was started out as fan fiction with a friend, and I just liked writing. I had always created stories when I was a kid. Being a kid of divorce, I would stick myself into TV shows, heart to heart, yeah, they had a kid. It was me. I would run with these stories in my head because it was easier to go into a make-believe world than to deal with that.
Yeah.
So that's how I started creating stories, and I would draw them out. And then as I got older, I just started writing them.
Yeah. I looked up your romantic suspense last night.
Did you?
Yeah, looks interesting.
Well, if you'd like a copy, just let me know.
Oh, thank you.
So I guess I've taken up enough of your time now. Do you
But
have
we had
anything?
so much fun.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
My books.
Oh, of course.
They're both on how to manifest.
Mhm.
Just one's towards parenting and one is towards, your future, whatever that future is.
Mhm.
They're available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, and Apple.
Okay.
Actually, this is just Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Yeah.
Do you plan on doing an audiobook?
I haven't looked at that, but I really should. A lot of people are asking about it.
Yeah, it's a venue that's going to be opening up, I think, more. So,
Yeah.
So, well, on that note, I thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. Oh, please go to my website.
Oh, I will put all that. Those links will be in the show notes. They can hit your social media accounts and your website. So, and also your books. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
I think the conversation with Judith was an important one because firstly, if you are having a medical problem, and I'm not, back to the medical issue, it's not that I'm against doctors. I think that, like, as I said in the podcast, when you have 15 minutes to explain something to a medical professional, you're not necessarily going to be able to get it through in that short amount of time. B, you may not remember everything. I mean, how many times do you just like in the beginning of the conversation, I stated to you, or the podcast, that Judith had said this to me afterwards. She wanted to, but we got off on a sidetrack note and off we went. But, there's not always, unless you have somebody going with you to the doctor, there's a chance you're not going to remember unless you've taken notes and you bring a notepad in. And who does this? Because you don't think about writing it down or your phone. So I think that, if you have a problem that's chronic and you go in with some knowledge about it, it makes it easier for the doctor to try to find a cure for you or help for you. But you have to be willing to be honest with yourself. If it's something that is stress related, then you have to look at the factors of, do I need this person in my life? Do I need this job in my life? Is it worth my body, my mind, my spirit, and my soul? Are those things being sucked dry and I'm not going to be able to function? Because mental will end up affecting physical, and you have to pay attention closely. And that goes back to also looking at manifesting. So if you're manifesting, as she was saying, if you're manifesting that, I don't have time to sit down and write, the universe will say, okay, well, I'll give you something that's going to force you to sit down and write. It's kind of like, the tarot card, the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man, you can sit there and swing in the breeze, but ultimately you have to make a choice, because you know what? If you don't make that choice, the choice will be made for you. And then don't say it was out of your control, because the choice was still made for you. You just didn't take the option and exercise the option of your choice. The universe helped you with it. So as you go along, pay attention to signs, pay attention to what keeps repeating itself. If it's a number, if it's a comment, if it's a word, pay attention. A sign can come, like she said, in a magazine. For me, a fortune cookie. It can come across as a song on the radio. There are things that happen that we are not always aware of. I remember when my husband passed, I had taken him off life support. He hadn't passed yet. And I got in the car and I had my phone on random on my iTunes, and a song came on and it talked about a person going down the drain, basically dying. And it was just like, that was the first thing that came across the speakers right after I had taken him off life support. And it kind of hit me hard, because it was like, wow, I just did this, and now this is the message I'm hearing. So, and it wasn't a bad song. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like, you see the reality and the soundtrack of the reality. So pay attention to what is around you. Pay attention to the people, pay attention to the messages. I mean, I can watch TV and sometimes, the plot line on a show, they're talking about something you're going through. Pay attention to these things because that is the universe trying to communicate with you at times. And I'm not talking about hearing voices, talking about situations on a TV show. So on that note, as always, Judith's links are in the show notes. The notes for the better2podcast.com are in the notes. All our social media is there, as well as a link to watch it on video. If you are watching this on video, then you don't need that link. But if you go to the better2podcast.com site, all the links are there. We have a link to the Patreon account. We also have a link to buy me a cup of coffee to support the show. I greatly appreciate you guys. And as always, if you have a comment or a question, please don't hesitate to reach out at donna@better2podcast.com. And on that note, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care and catch you next time. Bye. You are listening to the Better 2 Podcast with DM Needom.